Professor Saul, you are the UN Special Rapporteur on Counterterrorism and Human Rights, as well as the Chalice Chair of International Law at the University of Sydney. The allegation of fighting terrorism has been central to Israel's war on Gaza and Lebanon and elsewhere. Is fighting terrorism a justification for attacks that eventually kill civilians under international law and international humanitarian law? Could you please walk us through the legal implications of that and your legal analysis, please?
So under international law, every country must respect the rules of international law relevant when countering terrorism. That includes the international prohibition on the use of force. It includes international humanitarian law and also international human rights law. So there are no exceptions, even when fighting terrorism or fighting a war for national survival in a traditional interstate conflict. Those rules must always be respected. They also have to be respected even if the other side does not respect them. So if you're fighting a terrorist group which itself is committing lots of war crimes or international crimes, that never gives a government an excuse to commit war crimes or international crimes of their own in response. Now, when there's an armed conflict, international humanitarian law contains a series of rules to regulate the fighting. That means allowing both sides to fight militarily while also respecting fundamental constraints in order to protect civilians and prisoners, to ensure that humanitarian relief is provided to civilian populations who are caught up amongst the fighting, to ensure that hospitals and medical professionals are protected, and to ensure that even prisoners of war or prisoners who were once fighters are treated with respect and dignity and are not tortured or mistreated or denied food or medical care in detention. Now, of course, during war fighting, some civilians will inevitably be killed. That can be lawful in certain circumstances. But the key rule here is what we call the rule of proportionality, which means that it is illegal to launch a military strike if the civilian casualties anticipated from that strike would be excessive relative to the military advantage anticipated. In other words, you cannot cause disproportionate civilian casualties when undertaking an attack. Further rules to protect civilians require that the parties fighting must take what we call adequate precautions, all feasible precautions, to ensure that they verify the target is military and not civilian, to also verify that the civilian casualties would not be excessive. So if you can do things like attack at a different time or attack in a different way by, for example, using a less powerful weapon or a weapon which is more precise or more targeted, and if doing that would protect more civilians, then those are things you should do in conducting your war fighting.